Well, folks, for me, it is that time of year, that point in our homeschool life where we're hitting this sort of stall or lull in our momentum in our homeschool. Are any of you other mamas at that point too? I find that this is a natural ebb and flow that happens in our homeschool, with this being our 9th year homeschooling at this point. This is not anything new, but it's important to take our homeschools captive now to avoid burnout. So this year for us, our year started out strong. The momentum was fierce, and it was just an amazing start to our homeschool year. And it was just a solid routine and just checking off all the boxes and getting it all done in each day that I had things planned. However, there are things that happen in life, things like fall breaks, or things like illness, or just other things that throw a wrench in your normal day. Now, I am not opposed to doing impromptu field trips and visits to the park. That is not what I'm talking about. That is something we've always done in our homeschool and always made room for and adjustment for. But there are some times when we approach seasons in our lives and in our homeschool where our homeschool inadvertently takes kind of a back seat. Things still get done, the big subjects, quote unquote, get done still, but there's that gusto that's missing there that was there at the beginning of the year, and maybe lessons are done kind of half-heartedly, and so there's just not as much intentional learning going on as what there was previously. Now, I have also found in all of my years homeschooling that while that ebb and flow does happen, it's important at this point, when we hit this point, to take, like I said, our homeschools captive, in the sense that we say, okay, I see this happening. I see where it's going. It's going to lead to burnout for everybody involved. Our whole family is going to hit that burnout stage, and I don't want that to happen. So this is the point in the year where I see, oh my goodness, you know what? I have to adjust. I have to reassess. What are we not getting done? What needs to take precedence over anything else? And so that is what I want to talk to you guys about today. Now, why am I talking to you all about this? Obviously, I don't have it all figured out if I am the one confessing in this video that we have hit this point in our homeschool. But more so, I'm sharing for accountability's sake, and just for the relating to you other mamas who may be at this point in your homeschool year as well, or who may approach it here pretty soon. Especially after the holidays, it's a time of year where that seems to happen a lot. So we don't have to stay in the rut once we hit it. You know, there are some days where it's just like, oh, I don't want to, but you do it. You know, you push forward and you do it. And like I said, it's either you do the bare bones or you kind of half-heartedly do what needs to be done to get it done, right? When you hit these little ruts. But you don't have to stay in this space. Like, we don't have to stay where we feel like our homeschool is kind of in a slump. We don't have to stay there. And one of the things that I like to do to get out of it, to avoid what could be coming, which is burnout or curriculum changes or anything else, because this is the point where a lot of times those curriculum changes and stuff take place. While I'm all about curriculum changes when they're necessary, sometimes they aren't really necessary, and it's actually due to the fact that we've hit the slump, and the only way we think that we can get out of it is by changing our curriculum. But that's not always the case. This is where it's important that we are aware of what the issues are in our homeschool, and the way that we figure that out is we assess them. And so a weekend especially is a great time. Today is Saturday. Now, if it's not a weekend and you feel it necessary to do this, by all means do it. I find myself doing this kind of stuff on weeknights as well. Just wherever you can fit it in is the time to do it. So the first thing that I like to think about is, first of all, to assess what are any problems that are there. Is it a heart issue on my part? Is it a routine issue? Is it something like that? And so I like to go through and I like to renew or revamp my routines. Now, our routine that we were using at the beginning of the year, that's not the issue. The issue is that I have not been maintaining the routine with intentionality. And so knowing that and being self-aware of that, that is the first step in fixing that. Also, I find that prayer and really seeking the Lord on that is important as well, because a lot of times it is tied to a heart issue. As I said, it's a lack of intentionality on my part, because as mamas, we set the mood a lot of times for our home and our homeschool. And so if we are not in the right heart space and in the right head space, then the mood of our home and our homeschool is just going to be off. Okay, so that reassessment and renewal of routine and heart check and all of those things, that's the first thing I like to reflect on. So when talking about things like routines and reevaluating those and just reflecting back on what routines have worked best for us, I also have to think about like our home routines, not just our homeschool, because there are things like meal planning and meal prep and stuff that I have found to be very valuable things to utilize in order to keep us like focused and on track. If I can focus completely on homeschooling at that moment when I need to homeschool and not have to think about, oh, what's for dinner this evening? Or, oh, let me scramble and get something ready for breakfast. If I can have things already in my mind that are coming next that day, then that helps a lot. The next thing I like to do is I like to sit down and I like to go back through the planning that I started at the beginning of the year, those planning practices. Now, if you saw my planning video at the beginning of the school year, if you want to check that out, I'll link it down below. But planning is something that's very important for me, especially. I was diagnosed with ADD as a adolescent. I don't remember the exact age. And it is something that I have honestly has been a struggle for me my whole life. Like with just staying focused. I learned some really amazing coping skills through like counseling and stuff when I was young. And that has helped me a ton. But I also know that self-awareness is something that's really important for me, that reflection and that heart check and all of those things, and just keeping myself accountable, the self-discipline aspect of making myself sit down and make a plan. So my planning at the beginning of the year typically is very structured for how I plan out our homeschool days. There's a reason for that, and that is to build in those habits. So it starts to lax off just a little bit to like a nice little medium as the year goes on. But when I get to this space where I feel like I'm in this lull, then I know that I need to go back to that very more like structured planning that I do typically at the beginning of a school year, because that is going to give me that gusto to just keep going forward, and that also keeps me more intentional and accountable to what I have spent so much time doing. So that's the next thing, is I have to make sure that I sit down and I plan. Another thing that I like to do is I like to reflect on the incentive of it all. First of all, the incentive is that my children are learning with intentionality, because I am teaching with intentionality or leading with intentionality. So once again, we see the byproduct of that a lot of times in our kids. When we are intentional, they become more intentional. So with that said, that is one incentive. The next incentive would be, we are going to be Christmas schooling this year, and I am so excited about it. Last year, we kind of more so took the month of December off to focus more on just like Advent and just rest and everything and read alouds. But this year we are doing full-on Christmas school. We're going to keep our reading and our math, but we are going to do Christmas curriculum galore. I am so ready for it. Give me all the crafts, give me all the treats, all of the things, we are doing it this year, and I'm super excited about it. That's my second incentive. The third, which really should be my first, is that do all things unto the Lord, right? God has absolutely brought our family to the journey of homeschooling. This is absolutely what our family was ordained to do, and God has made that evident through the years. And as a mom and as my children's teacher, it is my role to disciple my children spiritually, but also academically, because it's through those academics that I am working to develop a Christian worldview in my children. And if I am not being intentional with that, then I am not doing what I should be doing as far as stewardship and where the Lord has placed me. And so that really should be my number one. I just am going in order of what I'm thinking of as I'm talking to you guys. So renewing those habits and routines, getting that planning back down the way that I need to, structured and focused and intentional, and then also thinking about those incentives, those natural consequences, that not all consequences are negative. And so I want my actions to lead to that positive outcome, and one that impacts my whole family in a positive way. And so focusing on those incentives and those byproducts of the choices that I make as far as, revamping and renewing our homeschool at this point. So again, why am I making this video? To encourage you guys, but also as accountability for myself in refocusing myself, my heart, and my children in our homeschooling endeavor. So I hope that you guys found this video helpful. There's other things I'm sure that I could think of and list that are helpful for me in just refocusing in our homeschool when we hit these points, but I would love for you guys to share down below some of the things that maybe help you when you hit these points. And I hope, like I said, that this video was helpful. Thank you so much and have a blessed day.